Rossini wrote a lot of music that is as hummable as the William Tell Overture, but perhaps not quite so well known. How much Rossini do we really know that is away from the opera stage? Well, maybe we can fill in some of those blanks today with a lot of help from our guest here at NPR Studio 4A, tenor Rockwell Blake, a singer who has been described as the #1 Rossini tenor of today. Hello, Mr. Blake. Welcome to NPR.
Thank you for the invitation.
It is our pleasure. First of all, what does it mean to be a Rossini tenor?
It means to be able to sing the music that Rossini wrote. And there's a technique required to be able to execute that music in a proper way. And today it's becoming more popular.
Now, I know that the music of Rossini is part of this school, this style known as bel-canto. I wonder if you could take just a moment to explain just what is bel-canto music.
Bel-canto music, we could say, is controversial in a sense because it refers to a period of time in history as well as a type of music and a style of singing. And I boil it down to one specific fact about the period of time when this music was written. And that fact is that the composers of that period were writing for specific singers. They knew who was going to be singing their music, and they tailored their music to the specific attributes of the singers they had at hand. And this practice died very soon after the bel canto period, and the last composer to really write for specific voices and specifically pieces that would show off the singers he had in front of him was Bellini. And when we move into Verdi and Puccini, they were writing pieces that could be sung by anyone that had a voice and could be taught to make a pretty sound. It happens that the differences from Bellini onto Verdi would be considered, I would say, the number of syllables that are assigned to numbers of notes. In that Bellini and previous, you would find each syllable may have 4 or 5 notes to be sung with that single syllable. And after that period, most of the time, it was a single syllable, a single note.
So essentially we're talking about events in the first half of the 19th century.
Oh, yeah.
Give us an example of this Rossini style, this bel canto style. What are you going to sing for us first?
Well, I'm going to sing for you a song that he wrote that's called La Danza, and is a song sung by a young fellow who seems to be throwing a party. And he explains to his mother how excited he is about the dance, and he ushers in the dancers and sings to them and tells them and how wonderful it will be, and then describes it, and generally has a great time singing many, many notes with very few words.
So this is true bel canto style.
Absolutely.
So here from NPR Studio 4A, tenor Rockwell Blake and pianist Denise Massé performing La Danza by Gioachino Rossini.
Mamma mia, si salterà, allora per danzare che in amor non mancherà. Già la luna in mezzo mare, mamma mia, si salterà, allora per danzare che in amor non mancherà. Già la luna in mezzo mare, mamma mia, si salterà. Presto in danza, conto a conto, donne mie, venite qua. Un garzon bello e giocondo a ciascuna toccherà. Finché in ciel brilla una stella e la luna splenderà. Il più bel con la più bella tutta notte danzerà. Mamma mia, già la luna in mezzo mare. Mamma mia, già la luna si salterà. Frinche, 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 mamma mia, si salterà. Frinche, 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 mamma mia, si salterà. La 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 salta, gira, gira, ogni coppia cerchio va, già s'avanza, si ritira e la salto tornerà. Salta, salta, gira, gira, ogni coppia cerchio va, già s'avanza, si ritira e la salto tornerà. Già s'avanza, si ritira e all'assalto tornerà. Serra, serra, con la bionda, con la bruna va qua e là, con la rosa va seconda, con la sporca fermo sta. Viva il ballo tondo a tondo, sono un re, sono un bascià, e il più bel piacer del mondo, la più cara volutà. Mamma mia, già la luna in mezzo mare, mamma mia, si salterà. Frinche, 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 mamma mia, si salterà. Frinche, 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 mamma mia, si salterà. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la.
La Danza, the dance by Gioacchino Rossini, an example of the Rossini style, the bel-canto style, sung by Rossini tenor Rockwell Blake, assisted by pianist Denise Massé, in a performance from right here at National Public Radio's Studio 4A. Thank you, Mr. Blake. May I call you Rockwell?
Sure, call me Rocky.
Rocky Blake. Where did you begin your musical career?
Well, I was enjoying music as a hobby in Peru Central School, which is in Peru, New York. It's way up there in the north, and we had a really wonderful music program, strangely enough, and I got involved, and I loved it. And it so happened that the misfortune of my band director turned out to be my great fortune, and he was put in the hospital for a slipped disc and was replaced by a woman that came in to substitute for him and was a voice teacher and had studied in Italy and heard me sing in the chorus and in the Gilbert and Sullivan operettas that we were preparing. And she convinced my father to bring me out to her house once a week, every week, to study with her. And I enjoyed myself. It was still a hobby until one day she said, I want you to make some auditions. And in the latter part of my junior year in high school, I went off to the different colleges and universities that I thought would be challenging and made some auditions. And the reaction to my auditions were so positive, I decided I'd make a career of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are you going to sing for us next?
Well, I thought to perhaps demonstrate the stylistic difference of the music that came before Rossini, I thought I'd sing something of Händel from the oratorio that he wrote called Semele, and it's Where'er You Walk.
Van der Glade
Where You Walk from Semele by George Frederick Händel, performed here in NPR Studio 4A by tenor Rockwell Blake and pianist Denise Massey. Now, as I understand it, you can blow out your speakers by playing music too loudly. And it is also possible to blow out your voice, to destroy your vocal cords, your vocal equipment, by singing certain kinds of repertoire in the wrong way. And again, as I understand it, this bel-canto style is prime blow out your vocal cords material.
Well, in a way, you're right. The material that has gained a reputation for being dangerous is material I actually don't do. Mm-hmm. And I think the main piece is Norma of Bellini. And from my point of view, it's rather misunderstood. And the singers that approach the music approach it from the direction of Verdi. They come from a tradition of singing things that are different from this opera. And they come upon the rocks many times. And
now, could you just describe how that coming up on the rocks works? I mean, what happens to destroy your voice?
Well, in a sense, they get confused. The vocality, the technique that's required to really make sense of the music that Bellini wrote for Norma is different from the technique you need for Verdi, and it's more complicated. An analogy would be someone who's used to doing the slalom, skiing down the slopes in a slalom, and have nice wide curves to make. And all of a sudden, you shorten their skis and you put those gates just 2 feet apart, and have them going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth through there. And if they're not used to that, a slalom skier is not going to do well. And if he's not careful, he can break his leg.
Now, for your next piece today, you're going to leave the bel-canto style behind and advance into the time of Giuseppe Verdi. What do you have for us?
Well, it's a little song called Stornello. I guess you would say it's a jilted lover telling off she who had jilted him. And the style is Verdi, but it's actually Italian in its song repertoire, so it's really not opera.
Well, let's hear this Italian song by Giuseppe Verdi, Stornello, performed again right here at NPR Studio 4A by tenor Rockwell Blake and pianist Denise Massey.
Tu dici che non m'ami, anch'io non t'amo. Dici non mi vuoi bene, non te ne voglio. Dici che un altro pesce hai teso l'amo, anch'io in altro giardin la rosa coglio. Anche di questo che ci accordiamo, tu fa quel che ti pare, io quel che voglio. Son libero di me, padrone ognuno, servo di tutti e non servo a nessuno. Costanza nell'amor è una follia, volubile io sono e me ne vanto, non tremo più scontrandoti per via, e quando sei lontano mi strugo in pianto, come osini orcusci di prigionia, tutta la notte e il dì voleggio e canto. Son libero di me, padroni ognuno, servo di tutti e non servo a nessuno.
Music by Giuseppe Verdi, sung here in NPR Studio 4A by tenor Rockwell Blake and assisted by pianist Denise Massey, a piece by Verdi called Stornello, a little fight, a musical fight. Rocky, tenors seem to be incredibly popular these days. Certainly 3 of them are. Where would public radio and public TV be without the 3 tenors?
Survival is assured.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of this? I mean, I know that tenors going back to, certainly to Caruso, and before that, tenors have always been popular. What do you guys have that the world wants?
Macho, I guess. It's I really don't know, but it's been true throughout all history that in the singing art, the lover character, the person who has always been looked after and wanted most, has been the highest voice that a man can produce. And it starts with the castrati. They were singing soprano, but they were males, and they were the most famous and truly the richest people that sang opera were then, and were castrati. And I really have never been able to figure it quite, why a bass or a baritone or a bass baritone could not have the same kind of allure. Because oftentimes I was listening to my colleagues who are basses, I often go up to them after hearing them sing, saying, I wish I could have your voice for an hour. Because it sounds so wonderful. It would be wonderful to put that voice in my body.
Now, leave aside for a moment any feelings you might have that you wished it would be the four tenors. And what do you think about these spectacles, the three tenors at the baths in Rome or in Dodger Stadium singing before billions and billions of people? What do you think about these spectacles?
Well, I think it's valuable in a way. One doesn't always have to try to look for relevance in every event, but I think it's probable that one could find a reason for being, saying, let us rationalize what's valuable about this. And I'd say it's popularizing opera in a way. It's an art form that these three tenors are certainly very good exponents of the art form. The event is something different. It was extremely profitable for everyone concerned, and everyone was extremely happy about it. And I can't see a negative point about it, from my point of view. As a matter of fact, I have a group of presenters in Japan that are offering me exactly the same sort of event, not the same three tenors, but three tenors of my category. And
the three bel-canti tenors.
Yeah, exactly. And we're all wondering, what should we do? How should it be done? How should it be organized? And it's nobody wrote any music for three tenors to sing together. It's something that one must have to invent.
I have a feeling somebody somewhere is right now. You're next going to sing some very beautiful music by an American composer, beloved American composer, Stephen Foster. Does Beautiful Dreamer need an introduction?
I think it needs one small comment. I call it bel-canto. And I call it bel-canto not so much that it was written in the bel-canto style or with the intent that some bel-cantists should sing it, but I call it that because it belongs to that period, and the sentiments are very similar.
This is Beautiful Dreamer by Stephen Foster. Again, tenor Rockwell Blake and pianist Denise Massé.
Are waiting for thee. Sounds of the rude world heard in the day, lulled by the moonlight, have all passed away. Beautiful dreamer, queen of my song, list while I woo thee with soft melody. Gone are the cares of life's busy throng. Beautiful dreamer, awake unto me. Beautiful dreamer, awake unto me. Beautiful dreamer, out on the sea, mermaids are chanting the wild Lorelei. Over the streamlet, vapors are born, waiting to fade at the bright coming morn. Beautiful dreamer, beam on my heart, unto me. Beautiful dreamer, awake unto me.
That is a gorgeous song, Rocky. Beautiful Dreamer by Stephen Foster, Rockwell Blake, the tenor, Denise Massé, the pianist, performing here at NPR's Studio 4A. I sometimes wonder if Stephen Foster had in fact been born in Italy or Germany or somewhere other than the good old USA, he might not have a higher reputation in this country.
Well, he certainly would have lived better. Because his life was not terribly attractive. And he was in America in a period of time when it was very difficult for a composer. And I think he would have been an opera composer, definitely.
Well, he wrote some of the most beautiful melodies that I know of. I mean, beautiful.
And he's terribly popular in Italy as well. I sing Beautiful Dreamer and a number of his other songs in recital in Italy. And I have always, after a performance, I have people coming up to me and saying, where can we get these songs?
Sounds like you're very happy with where you are artistically right now.
Well, I keep saying life is good.
Well, thank you very much for sharing some of it with us today. Rockwell Blake, Rocky Blake, the Rossini tenor, who has joined us today here at Studio 4A at National Public Radio. Thanks a lot, Rocky. Best
My
of luck.
pleasure.
I was doing some interviews at the New York City Opera, and at the time there was an opera on the schedule called Cantori, or La Contorie, and a young man was making his debut, which was phenomenally received. And since then, that young man, by the name of Rockwell Blake, has risen to extraordinary heights in the world of opera at the Met and City Opera, and in fact all around the world. It's a great, great pleasure to welcome
Thank you very
Rockwell
much.
Blake.
Thank you so much.
Listen, Rockwell, everybody thinks that opera singers get born to the rich and famous and, are carefully taken care of like hothouse flowers and can't wait to move to the big city and the bright lights. And so far, I've mentioned just about everything that does not apply to Rockwell Blake.
It's quite true. I was born to a very poor family and had no idea what an opera was until my high school years. And a voice teacher happened to come into my school because she was substitute teaching for my choral director and decided that I was going to take voice lessons. And I can't say that I must say I was reluctant. And she, being the person that she is, impressed upon me how important it was to keep my hands and that I would sing. She had offered to cut them off if I didn't. And
A compelling argument.
that's right. So I started taking voice lessons, and I found that music was a joy to me anyway, because I was singing anyway in school. But I decided I'd be an opera singer when I found out that I could actually sing this stuff. And she introduced me to Rossini and said, you should sing this music because you have a capacity for it. And then she proceeded to teach me how to do it. And so from that point on, since my sophomore year, senior year of high school, I've known that this is what I wanted to do, but I really didn't know how I was going to do it.
You've got to admit, Rockwell Blake, that is an extraordinary story. I mean, first of all, most people feel that if you don't start nurturing a child from a very early age, and I'm talking about way before the kid's voice is changing,
Sure.
that you are doing strange things to those person's vocal cords, and that it is unlikely that that person will be able to sing, forget bel-canto, and become a major opera singer.
Well, I
To
think
say nothing of having been exposed to the
Sure.
repertory and all the rest of the things that
Sure.
one presupposes.
Sure. Well, it's true. I mean, many of my colleagues knew they wanted to be opera singers before they even knew they had a voice. And I have many friends in the world that knew they wanted to be an opera singer and then discovered that they didn't have a voice.
Yes, we all have those friends.
And but for me, it was a discovery of someone else. Someone else decided for me that this was something I should discover, I should explore. And I explored it, discovered that I could do it, and then cultivated a taste for it, and then it was up to me to get the culture of music under my belt, to learn a little bit about theory and composition and why things are written in the way they are. Structure.
Prior to that period in high school, what kind of music had you been exposed to? What were you listening to?
Well,
You're 35, 36 years old now, something like that.
Yeah, I'm 35. And back then, I never was a popular culture individual. I didn't really care for popular music even at that time. I enjoyed Broadway musicals, and I enjoyed jazz and progressive jazz. And so for me, that was what I played on my record player. And so those are the things that I was listening to. But when I found out that I could sing, I decided that I should know something of classical music, and I started buying what I could. I couldn't afford a lot of records, but I bought the budget labels,
Right.
and put classical music on my record player, and then tried to find and borrow scores of them and see how they were put together and see how they were written, so that I could have some idea of what I was doing.
At what point, I'm going to just sort of interrupt myself here to say that I have said very little in the introduction. There may be one or two people out there who spent the last couple of years on Mars and don't know what Rockwell Blake has been doing in the world of opera. I'm going to quote from the New Yorker. He is the wide-ranging, high-flying, heroic coloratura tenor phenomenon we've been waiting for since the Ottocento revival began. Now, the kinds of reviews that you've gotten, Rockwell Blake, for the most difficult repertory in all of opera, as anybody will admit, is truly extraordinary. High Fidelity magazine said he could do things that no other tenor can do. I don't know if that's good or bad, but no, that's good. He has been desperately needed, and the kinds of roles that you take on with great regularity are the kinds of roles that many vocal coaches would steer a young voice away from, saying that this could really
Could ruin them.
blow it out at a very early age.
Sure.
Well, at what point did you decide that that was an area in which you were particularly interested?
Well, it didn't happen that I decided that area was where I was going. It happened that I was offered these sorts of roles, the Mithridates of Mozart, which are impossible to sing, and
Yes,
Robert le Diable.
You have said that's your favorite.
That's
one
one
of
of
your
them.
favorite roles.
It is. It happens to be because it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to sing because people don't expect you to sing them. First of all, and people come to performances prepared to survive the tenor arias. They expect to. If I can sit through this, I will make it to the end of the opera. Whereas they come and they're astounded by these arias because I produce them as if you don't see them on the page. People will look at them on the page and listen to me sing them and say, but it doesn't sound like what I'm seeing, because they say the high notes in this piece are ridiculously high, but when you sing them, they don't sound like that. I have the first aria and the second and the last aria of 5 arias in the Mithridates have huge leaps of 2 octaves, and they go up to high C, and they over and over again. It's not just once, it's over and over and over again, 3 times at the end of a phrase, and that phrase will come back 4 times. And people will say, I looked at that in the score and thought that I was going to hear someone kill himself on the stage, and they come back after the performance and they say, this is incredible. They said, it doesn't look like it, because it sounds like, instead of high C, it sounds like in the middle of your voice.
The point here is, they used to say, if you got a singing dog, it doesn't really matter what he's doing. The fact is the dog is singing. But in opera,
you can't do
God
that.
hopes, you are searching for something beyond simply the production of the notes. And that means that you've got to have an enormous amount of control under your belt to be able to produce a leap of a couple of octaves and make it sound like music as opposed to standing on your head.
That's right. It's not that sort of commando course.
But since you have a 2.5 octave range, as we said so here, and you're doing 2 octave leaps, you must have a 2.5 octave range. That extraordinary ability and gift is one, again, which people might think takes an enormous amount of nurturing, and that you walk around with scarves and have special brews of teas and lemon and that again is just untrue. Your whole approach to life seems to be that you want to live life in a particular way. You still live in upstate New York,
Oh yeah, we still live in the cold belt. Yes, cold and snow.
and don't walk around with a million scarves
No,
and
it's-
go to sleep at 6 o'clock at night and do all other sorts of strange things, or at least that's what one hears.
No, it's true. I don't, and it was my voice teacher's one of her first advices to me is that don't pamper yourself, because if you pamper yourself now or pamper yourself in general, you're going to put yourself in the position of becoming ill more easily because you don't give yourself resistance. You don't give yourself the ability to fight off what you have been running away from all your life.
This is the theory that if you live in New York City and breathe this air, nothing else ever can kill you.
And the same sort of thing, yes.
The among the operas which you have in your repertoire, and you have a fabulous number of operas in your repertoire. I'm looking through pieces of paper here, but the
I
number
think
is
there are to this date 28 operas.
28. Of those 28, how many would you say are the standard operatic repertoire? A half a dozen?
Less.
Okay.
Less. I would say of the standard repertoire, maybe 3.
Now, don't you think that puts you in a sort of an odd place in terms of what everybody else is doing out there? And is that a place you've chosen to be in? You just really enjoy doing the bel-canto operas, which are not presented because it's hard to find people
That's
to
right.
sing in them.
That's right.
Doesn't that put a very special stress both on your career and on your vocal cords?
Well, it puts it more on the career than the vocal cords because I have found that my voice is very adapted to the bel-canto repertoire and also to the Baroque because of the agility that I have and the fact that the range of my voice is extraordinarily wide. The stress is that people that understand what I do want me to be in their productions of Sonnambula and their productions of Semele and things that require a peculiar demand upon on a tenor. The demand that is always put on my voice, that I put on my voice all the time in the productions that I do and the pieces that I want to do, are the same demands that are regularly put on the coloratura mezzo and the coloratura soprano.
Yes.
And those, it's not expected of a tenor because at least in our century, tenors have not, and basses have not been able to produce that. So when a production of, say, Semiramide is thought of, they think, well, we need a really great soprano and we really need a great mezzo-soprano. And so, yeah, we got to find a tenor and a bass that can survive, to get through it. And I put myself in the position that if you're going to produce these pieces, why not fill out the cast with people that can serve up all the music as it was served up? Not necessarily a mirror image of what was done in the period, but at least give the image of the music as it is on the page instead of guesswork and cutting it to pieces so that you take out all the hard parts and or do it so slow that the coloratura doesn't sound like coloratura anymore. It's no longer flashy. It becomes very slow,
We're
drawn
coming,
out.
We're coming up to a break, but I just wanted to ask you, you were talking about music from the Baroque era. Do you change your vocal style when you are going from the bel-canto era to the Baroque era? Do you do less vibrato? Do you do any of the other little things that one hears ought to be done if one is going to be absolutely true, if there is a definition of what true is when you're talking about something that's a couple hundred years old?
It's a matter that one, at least I find myself in the Baroque period doing less of the melismas and the less of the smooth kind of phrasing where you put in a portamento here and there. You don't, and it becomes rather stark. But it's not stark. It's clean. It's the kind of singing you find in the Baroque period is the same sort of thing you find in the playing from that period. It's very crisp, and it's a different kind of virtuosity. which I think there's a difference in what the Baroque period called a virtuoso and what became in the Romantic period a virtuoso. There's a big difference.
However you want to define those differences, Rockwell Blake is indeed one of the great virtuosi of our era, maybe of any era. Opera News has said of Rockwell Blake, the hope for the future of bel-canto tenors. And there are many, many people who would agree with that. One example of the recognition that Rockwell Blake has been receiving is the fact that he's going to be singing against this newcomer, Sutherland, is that right?
Yes.
Joan Sutherland in Metropolitan Opera's production of I Puritani, and there are performances on December 2nd, December 6th, December 9th, December 13th, and December 18th.
That's
December
correct.
13th is a telecast live from the Met.
It's a broadcast. We won't be seeing it.
I'm
We'll
sorry,
be hearing it.
the Met broadcast, and that's the December 13th Met broadcast. I Puritani with Joan Sutherland and Rockwell Blake, and Mr. Blake has told me he will be traveling to Barcelona to do Sonnambula
That's correct.
in January, and that's wonderful as well. What about recordings, Rockwell?
Well, right now I'm working on finding a good conductor to do an aria recording that's going to be on Arabesque Records.
Wonderful. Well, we'll talk about that after the program. Our guest on Inside the Music is the extraordinary tenor Rockwell Blake, and we've got more to come. We'll be back with Rockwell Blake on Inside the Music when we return after this message. Strong high tones, you got to have a little heft on the old bones, Rockwell. You seem not to follow that rule either. You're handsomely built, as they say, a well-proportioned young guy. You know,
Constantly trying to lose
400
weight.
or 500 pounds hanging on the bones. What about that idea?
Well, I don't agree with it. You can't be anorexic. One cannot be so skinny as not to have any of the extra available energy on the stage. You have to be much like any athlete. You have to have a kind of stamina to be able to do the athletics of singing, which there are a good deal. But you don't have to be fat. You don't have to be overweight. I think it's a misnomer and I think it's actually a story told by those of us who are well beyond the range of plump. And they say that you must have a little heft on you to create these high notes and keep the phrases long and all of this. And it's wrong. It's simply, I think, creating a story to make reality palatable to everyone else. And the reality is that the person is big, or these people are big because they eat a lot. They don't have to, but it seems to be part of their lives. That's the reality of life, is that they eat a lot.
Gee, I'm going to write that one down. Maybe that will help me in the future to take off a few extra pounds. It's the eating.
Yeah, if you don't,
That's amazing.
if you eat, you're big. You don't. It's not because you have to sing.
Now, the other part of producing music, the other parts of producing music, aside from being able to have a gigantic range, especially useful in bel-canto, is diction and the ability to produce multiple notes rather quickly.
That's correct.
These are both areas in which you excel.
I do a great deal of work on my diction because I can take a great deal of pride in having people come back after performances and try to speak to me in the language I was just singing in.
Uh-huh.
And in Italian, I can return it. In French, I cannot, and it embarrasses me because people won't believe me when I tell them I don't speak French. But I spend a great deal of time trying to cultivate the diction so that it's on the stage.
Now, we both know, although we might not want to stand on Broadway and 52nd Street or around Lincoln Center and scream it out,
Yeah.
that with many singers, when there are many notes and many words lumped together in a measure or two,
Yes.
the frequent course of action is to simply produce notes, sometimes solfège,
That's correct.
other sounds completely unrelated to the words, under the theory that if you can just get those things out fast enough, that's all that really matters.
Well, the truth is that it's that a person who makes the argument that words get in the way of singing, that consonants get in the way of singing, are making the argument, instead of saying that, I can't say that that's true, they're making an argument for the fact they should have said. I find that I I find it difficult to make the consonants while I'm singing. And the truth is that it's not any more difficult to sing with with consonants or without. It's just a matter of how you've trained yourself. If you've trained yourself to put the consonants in and use them within the context of your singing, they come easily, and as a matter of fact, they come automatically. You need them because they become a habit. You have to put them in. For other people, there's a great pedagogy in America, especially, that states that consonants get in the way of singing. And as long as the teacher will tell the student that consonants get in the way of singing, of course the student's going to believe it. But I say it's not true. It's all in the training. It's all in how you have learned to sing. If you've learned to sing without the consonants, they're necessarily going to be difficult to put in.
What a segue this is, Rockwell Blake. You have led me exactly into the area I was headed, which has to do with the training of young singers and what the realities are for kids in music schools all around the country, in fact, all around the world.
That's true.
There have been extraordinarily strong criticisms of the quality of singing in the last, well, probably as far back as time. Everyone is saying that the present crop of singers is just no good. They probably said that in 1700. And,
Well, of course.
But there has been extraordinary criticism of the, among other things, of the interpretive direction that young people are given. In other words, are young people led to delve into a role and try to get some meaning out of it? Are they led to try to act and perform as well as produce notes? Are they given the direction to want to put in those consonants when they're practicing? Or is there a focus on the big stars and the big roles and, do whatever you can and then do a couple of Ave Maria, Merry Christmas records, and you got your career together? Well, is this an accurate view of what's going on? Do you think if it's not accurate, what is? And what do you think young people should be taught?
Well, to distill a discourse the size of the Britannica down to a few words, yes, it's accurate, and all of these things go into making the melisma that we are in. Our métier, in all, is difficult on every level. There's so many things that make a career in opera difficult, and singing teachers today have hard enough time teaching their students how to sing an ah vowel, and let alone to sing the ah vowel and move it from one note to another. And singing teachers generally don't know the business of opera, and I agree, I must say, that young singers don't seem to take the time to learn about music and what it is that the composers that were writing this music were interested in when they wrote it. They take a piece of music and they look at it, they learn the notes, they learn the words to a certain extent. Sometimes they translate it to know what they're singing, and sometimes they don't. Frequently don't. And that's about as far as they get. And then they spend the rest of the time, after they've learned the notes and some of the words, they spend the rest of the time trying to make those notes sound as loud as possible, with the idea in mind that they're going to be facing an orchestra that's in a very large pit, in a very large hall, and they're going to be fighting to be heard over the orchestra. And that idea tends to take a voice that may be very beautiful at the outset, at the beginning of a career, and tend to blow it out in a very short period. I mean short periods like 5 years,
That's right.
5, 6 years. A person that you heard 5 years ago, today you may say the person doesn't resemble anything like the sounds that were made 5 years ago. And this is why. It's this constant idea that they have to fight with an orchestra in order to be heard. and the non-preparation in what was the idea in the first place. Why would what did the composer have in mind when he wrote his notes and wrote his orchestra music under the notes?
Is the fault of teachers or of schools or of media giving people false expectations? Is it records? You know, people hear records and you can do anything you want, moving the dials around. It may have taken the guy 14 takes, or it could have been somebody else singing that note, as we all know has happened.
Yes.
What leads people to the false expectations and the wrong direction?
I think you've summed it up. You've given it's again, if you tried to put them all together, you could take each one of them and talk about why this particular the discs, the media, the false idea that they've got to sing loud all the time. All of these things coming together just add up to a great whole that makes it very difficult for the singers to last and to really put out a product that is, over the long run, wonderful. Or that their product over at the very beginning of their careers, we have, especially in America, the young singers. There have been a number of young singers that have come upon the scene, even in the time that I've started, and have been heralded as the next coming, the next Joan, or the next Beverly, or the next person, and very shortly to disappear or to go on to becoming a different voice category even. They've changed voice categories altogether. So
that's right, from tenor to wobble.
Oh yeah, tenor to wobble, or from coloratura to dramatic soprano. And the question is, you have to take each person individually. You know, there are reasons. Every different situation has a different set of reasons, but they all add up to different percentages of all the same reasons, but in different percentages. 10% of the disc, 5% of the screaming, and conductors and coaches, and they're all there. All of those things go into making the one whole. Reason this person has done this to his voice. Why? Because it's all the same reasons. It's just a matter of percentages. How much percent of this and percent of that?
We have just a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to ask you, or start off by saying that if I had said to you, had I known you, and had I said to you 10 or 12 years ago that there's going to be a bel-canto revival in the United States, and it's going to be pretty big, and people are going to start to take a real interest in operas like Puritani and Mitridate and some of them, Sonnambula. You and probably everybody else in the United States would have said that I was at best mad.
I agree. There's no way of knowing in advance that these sorts of things would come up. Looking back in retrospect, it's I think a natural movement in a way.
I agree with that.
Because we had, thanks to the great Dive, with starting out with Callas and Sutherland and Beverly and with Marilyn Horne, these people really brought the repertoire back to currency. And I was lucky enough to take part and continue to take part in it because I chose it. It wasn't as if I saw a great market out there and I said that I've got a particular kind of talent or ability that's going to make me a great stack of money because all of a sudden there's going to be this great revival of this music and I want to be in the middle of it. And it's not that way at all. For me, it was something I saw I could do, and I felt that it was interesting for me, and the product that I would produce, the art that I would produce, would be the best that I could do. The best thing that I could do would be this repertoire, and it just so happened that all of a sudden the repertoire that I chose is taking off.
You are happily married, you're living in upstate New York, you've got a smile on your face whenever I see you, you're in great demand all over the world. I have not even begun to list the places that you have sung over the last year and are going to sing in the next year, but it's all the major houses in Europe and the United States.
It's true.
You seem like it's all together for you, and you're a very happy young man. Is this accurate?
It's quite accurate. I'm very busy, busier than I ever expected to be, really. We have really no home life. My wife and I travel all the time. We see our house maybe a month to a month and a half a year.
You travel together?
We travel together.
Good for you.
And we have a little dog. We have a Scotty that goes with us.
And a lot of other kinds of terriers in statue and
That's
other
right.
form, I understand.
That's
Yes.
quite true. We don't carry the effigies with us. We leave them at home. But we are very, very busy, and I keep looking for. I mean, the things that I do, I enjoy doing, and I keep looking for new repertoire and new I say horizons. And this recording that I'm doing is one of those horizons. I'm doing a Rossini aria recording for tenor, and I'm
Wonderful.
doing all the Rossini arias that everyone's scared to death to do.
Well, you should only sell 1 or 2 million of those. Astonishing range and technique, as the review of the International Herald Tribune, the Houston Post, an absolutely astonishing exhibition of coloratura singing, the likes of which you just don't hear anymore. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, a phenomenon among tenors today. He's also a real nice guy. Rockwell Blake will be appearing opposite Joan Sutherland at the Metropolitan Opera's performance of E Puritani at the Metropolitan Opera House at Lincoln Center on December 2nd, December 6th, December 9th, December 13th, and that's the radio broadcast, and December 18th. So if you can beg, borrow, or steal, that's the place to be. And in January, Rockwell Blake will be traveling to Barcelona to sing Sonnambula, and we look forward to your recordings as well. I've very much enjoyed this half hour with tenor Rockwell Blake. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Inside the Music. My name is Matthew Field. Inside the Music